What if I told you that the fall of one of the world's greatest empires was the work of the locals themselves? We've grown accustomed to believing that a handful of Spaniards in iron armor single-handedly crushed the mighty Aztec Empire. This myth was cultivated over centuries to highlight the exceptional bravery and technical superiority of European conquerors. In reality, what unfolded in central Mexico was far more complex than a simple clash of two different cultures. The fate of this vast region was decided not only in the heat of battle, but also behind the scenes through political intrigues among tribal leaders. In reality, it was a large-scale civil war in which the Europeans played only the role of a small military support unit. The coalition of Montezuma's opponents numbered tens of thousands of seasoned fighters from cities such as Tlaxcala and Texcoco. It was these warriors who supplied the Spaniards with food, intelligence, and the main manpower on the battlefield. They saw Cortés as a tool for liberation from Aztec tyranny and an opportunity to reshape the world on their own terms. Without this powerful internal support, the Conquistador's campaign would have faltered at the very beginning. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how the hatred of the oppressed peoples turned into the most formidable weapon against Emperor Montezuma. We'll examine in detail exactly what promises Cortés made to his allies and how he manipulated them. You will see what happened to those who helped the Spaniards seize power once the smoke of battle had finally cleared. This video will open your eyes to the true heroes and anti-heroes of that great and tragic era. Immerse yourself in the true history of the conquest, which for a long time remained in the shadows of official accounts. I will reveal the best-kept secret behind the success of the Spanish expedition deep in the Mexican jungle. A vast number of people still believe that the Conquistador's victory was due solely to their technological superiority. But Cortés's true strength lay in his ability to exploit the deep internal conflicts among the local tribes. Every major settlement along the Spaniards' path had its own long-standing grievances with the central authority in Tenochtitlan. These people saw the newcomers not as conquerors, but as long-awaited allies in the fight for their independence. From the very beginning, this campaign turned into a complex diplomatic game of survival. The political map of the region in the early 16th century resembled a patchwork quilt of warring city-states. The Aztec Empire was not a unified, monolithic state in the modern sense of the word. It was a confederation held together by the force of arms and heavy tax obligations. Many cities paid enormous tributes in precious stones, textiles, and food. This constant economic pressure created fertile ground for widespread discontent among the conquered peoples. When strange people in metal armor landed on the coast, it merely served as the trigger for an explosion that had been brewing for a long time. The Tlaltec's military training and discipline were considered among the best in the entire region of central Mexico. From childhood, these warriors were conditioned to believe that their very existence depended on their skill on the battlefield. They developed unique tactical maneuvers to counter the superior forces of the Aztec army. Despite the lack of metal, their weapons made of obsidian and wood were deadly in skilled hands. The Spaniards quickly recognized the potential of these rugged mountain dwellers as indispensable guides and scouts. The alliance with them became a turning point in the entire history of the conquest of new lands. For a long time, many historians ignored the scale of the indigenous allies' contribution to the campaign's final outcome. If one counts the actual number of participants in the battles, the proportion of Europeans turns out to be negligible. For every Spanish soldier, there were several hundred local allies who performed the hardest work. They built bridges, cleared roads, and ensured the safety of the rear during long marches. Without this logistical support, the expedition would have been stuck in the jungle within a few weeks. Local knowledge of geography and climate was vital to the newcomers' survival. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether the Aztecs could have maintained their power if they had been more lenient toward their neighbors. Share your thoughts in the comments, as your perspective helps us better understand history. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the most interesting historical investigations. Your support is very important for the growth of our community and the creation of new in-depth videos. Thank you for staying with us and showing interest in the mysteries of the past. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how the first diplomatic negotiations in the New World began? When Cortés's ships reached the shores of the bay, they were met by representatives of the Totonac people. This people lived on the coast and were the first to feel the full brunt of Aztec rule. Local chiefs quickly realized that the newcomers possessed the strength to challenge the emperor. The Totonacs did not merely offer assistance, they became the first architects of the future alliance. Their knowledge of the capital's location and supply routes proved an invaluable gift to the Spaniards. The first settlement the conquistadors founded on the mainland was called Villa Rica de la Vera Cruz. It became not only a port, but also an important diplomatic center for gathering allies. Here, Cortés received delegations from local tribes who brought complaints about the injustices of the officials. The conquistador listened attentively and recorded every detail about the structure of the Aztec army. He demonstrated the power of his weapons to convince his guests of his might. The Totonacs were so impressed that they immediately provided thousands of porters for the expedition into the interior of the country. The communication system in the Aztec Empire functioned flawlessly and very quickly for its time. Posts with fast runners were stationed throughout the country, relaying messages along a chain. Emperor Montezuma learned of the foreigners' arrival almost the very same day they landed. His reaction was ambiguous and marked by long deliberations and religious doubts. He sent gifts and asked the newcomers not to approach his capital under any pretext. However, these gifts only fueled the Spaniards' interest in the riches of this vast country. Logistical challenges in the mountainous terrain were immense for people accustomed to European roads. The Totonacs helped the Spaniards find hidden trails that allowed them to bypass fortified Aztec outposts. They also taught the newcomers how to use local plants to treat various ailments. Knowledge of fresh water sources in arid regions was crucial for the march of a large group of people. Without this knowledge, the expedition could have perished from thirst and exhaustion halfway through the journey. The Allies literally carried the Spaniards on their shoulders toward their great goal. The hierarchy within the Allied forces was strict and aligned with local leadership traditions. Each unit was led by its own commander, who reported directly to Cortés or his deputies. The Spaniards tried not to interfere in the tribe's internal affairs as long as they carried out their combat duties. This fostered an atmosphere of mutual respect and trust within the military camp. Joint training and marches brought these people closer together, despite the language barrier. Military camaraderie grew stronger as they approached the borders of the main Aztec state. It is important to understand that the Totonacs risked everything by entering into this dangerous alliance. In the event of defeat, their cities would have been completely destroyed as a warning to other rebellious subjects. However, the prospect of being freed from endless taxes outweighed all possible risks. They saw Cortés as a tool with which to destroy the hated system. Their resolve was firm and did not waver even during the most difficult moments of the campaign. This loyalty became the foundation upon which the entire subsequent strategy of conquest was built. What do you think influenced the locals' decision to support the Spaniards more? Fear or hope for a better life? What I'm about to reveal will shed light on the economic reasons behind this massive betrayal. Read on to the next chapter to learn how taxes turned a thriving empire into a powder keg. This knowledge will allow you to take a fresh look at the reasons behind the fall of the great states of the past. Information about the financial flows of that time often remains overshadowed by great battles, but it is precisely this that determines the outcome of a war. Information worth millions of lives is hidden in the accounting books of the Aztec tribute collectors. These documents show that the empire's economy was built on the constant extraction of resources from the provinces. Every city had a strict delivery schedule that included tons of food and luxury goods. This was not a voluntary exchange of goods, but rather resembled organized plunder under the guise of the law. It was precisely this economic model that made the uprising practically inevitable in a massive event. No one wanted to work for the prosperity of a distant capital without receiving anything in return. The list of goods shipped to Tenochtitlan is striking in its variety and quantity. The provinces sent thousands of bales of cotton, cacao beans, rare feathers from tropical birds, and gold. Even the simplest items, such as pottery or reed mats, were subject to strict accounting. Producing such a volume of goods required the colossal labor of thousands of ordinary villagers. This took time away from cultivating their own fields and attending to the needs of the community. Gradually, this led to the depletion of local resources and a decline in the population's standard of living. Particular outrage was caused by the requirement to supply resources for the metropolis's religious ceremonies. A vast number of people were involved in the construction and maintenance of the capital's temple complexes. These labor obligations separated men from their families for long months without any compensation. The Aztecs considered this their legitimate right as the dominant power in the region. However, for the conquered peoples, it was merely an additional burden that sparked quiet fury. Gradually, this discontent built up in every home, in every village. The value of cacao beans as a universal currency of the time cannot be underestimated in economic calculations. The Aztecs controlled the main plantations and dictated the price of this product throughout the country. This allowed them to manipulate the prices of all other goods and services. The Spaniards were amazed by the efficiency of this system, which operated without the use of draft animals. All cargo was carried on people's backs over vast distances across difficult terrain. This logistical prowess was the result of centuries of experience organizing large-scale labor projects. Like this video if you didn't know these details about the Aztec tax system. Your engagement helps YouTube's algorithms show this video to more viewers. We strive to find the most unique facts for you, ones rarely mentioned in school textbooks. Support the development of high-quality historical content with a simple like under this video. Together we can uncover even more hidden pages of the history of the great civilizations of the past. Guess what happened next when Cortés met the woman who changed the course of history? Her name was Malinche, and she became not only an interpreter, but also the Spaniards' chief diplomatic advisor. Without her understanding of the intricacies of local etiquette and politics, the conquistadors could have made fatal mistakes. She spoke several languages and could explain complex concepts to representatives of different peoples. Malinche became the very bridge that allowed the Europeans to forge the most advantageous alliances. Her role in the fall of the empire cannot be overstated, as she was the voice of the Conquista itself. Malinche was given to Cortés by the leaders of the Tabasco tribe after their defeat in one of the first battles. She came from a noble family but was sold into slavery as a child due to family intrigues. This personal tragedy endowed her with a deep understanding of the psychology of the local elites and a thirst for justice. She quickly learned Spanish and became the captain's indispensable companion on all his campaigns. Her presence at negotiations always ensured that the meaning and mood of the parties were accurately conveyed. She was not merely an interpreter, but a full-fledged participant in the political process. The children of Malinche and Cortés became among the first mestizos in Mexican history. This marked the beginning of the formation of an entirely new nation, uniting the traits of two great cultures. Her life became a living embodiment of the process of merging worlds taking place against the backdrop of bloody battles. She left behind a complex legacy that still sparks heated debate in society. Her name has become a byword, reflecting all the contradictions of the country's colonial past. Malinche was and remains one of the most enigmatic figures of that era. Diplomatic successes in Tlaxcala would have been impossible without her active and wise participation in the discussions. She convinced the elders of the Republic that an alliance with the Spaniards would bring them greatness and security. Her speeches were full of logic and persuasive arguments that the local warriors and politicians could understand. She acted as a guarantor that Cortés's promises would be fulfilled in the future. The Tlaxcalans trusted her more than they did the foreigners with beards and strange clothes. This trust became the key to forming the most powerful coalition in the history of the campaign. Do you think Malinche could have prevented the empire's downfall if she had wanted to? In the next chapter, you'll learn how they coped with the terrible weather and challenging terrain on their way to the heart of the Aztec Empire. Ready to learn more about the hardships of this legendary journey? Insights into the soldiers' daily lives and trials will help you better understand the cost of this historic victory. The march on Tenochtitlan passed through high-altitude mountain passes, where the climate differed sharply from the hot coast of the Gulf. The Spaniards and their allies suffered from sudden temperature changes and a lack of oxygen at high altitudes. Rain turned the narrow trails into slippery traps, hindering the progress of heavily laden porters and horsemen. The lack of familiar food took a toll on the morale of the Spaniards, who were accustomed to a more varied diet. However, their shared goal drove them forward, despite all the climatic and physical obstacles. Every kilometer they covered brought them closer to the mysterious capital, about which so many legends circulated. The fog in the mountains was often so thick that the warriors could not see their comrades a few steps away. This created ideal conditions for ambushes by Aztec patrols, who were monitoring the strangers' advance. Commanders demanded complete silence during the march so as not to reveal their location prematurely. Night camps were cold and uncomfortable, as lighting large fires was forbidden for the sake of concealment. Soldiers slept clutching their weapons, ready at any moment to repel a sudden attack from the darkness. This constant tension wore people down no less than the physical labor. Setting up camp in the mountains required strict organization and discipline from everyone on the expedition. Each unit was assigned its own spot, which had to be fortified and prepared for a possible defense. The Allies were responsible for gathering firewood and preparing the bare minimum of hot food for everyone. The Spaniards stood guard, using their armor as their only protection against the biting night cold. The night hours were filled with the strange sounds of the wilderness, which frightened the Europeans, unaccustomed to such surroundings. This time became a period of deep reflection on the correctness of the chosen path and the possible consequences of their actions. The psychological pressure of the mountain silence and the endless expanses crushed the will of the expedition's weaker-spirited members. Some soldiers began to grumble, suggesting they return to the coast before it was too late to retreat. Cortés had to use all his eloquence and charisma to quell these sentiments and maintain discipline. Summing up this stage of the journey, one can say that nature was no less a formidable enemy than the Aztec army. The success of the crossing was due exclusively to the symbiosis of European will and the experience of the indigenous peoples. This cooperation made it possible to overcome geographical barriers that had previously been considered insurmountable for large groups of people. The coalition had been tested to its limits under the most extreme conditions that Mexican soil could offer. Now they were ready to make contact with the heart of the empire, backed by the experience of having successfully overcome incredible hardships. Ahead of them lay Tenochtitlan, the crown of their aspirations and the beginning of the end of the old world. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that the Aztecs were masters of hydraulic engineering. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was located on an island in the middle of the vast Lake Texcoco and was connected to the mainland by long causeways. This made the city a virtually impregnable fortress for any land army of the time. Cortés realized that without control over the waterways, he would never be able to fully blockade and capture this metropolis. It was then that the idea of building a fleet of brigantines was born, which were to become the decisive factor in the final battle for the city. But who built these ships in conditions of complete isolation from the sea? Construction of the fleet began in Tlaxcala, hundreds of kilometers from the lake, where work was in full swing in the forests and makeshift shipyards. Local carpenters and thousands of workers, under the guidance of a Spanish master, built the ship hulls from local timber. It was a unique project. The ships were designed so that they could be disassembled into parts and carried over the mountains by hand. Every beam, every plank, and every mast was numbered for subsequent assembly on the lake's shore. This titanic task was accomplished solely thanks to the selfless labor of the indigenous allies. Without their endurance and organization, this ambitious plan would have remained merely on paper. When the parts for the future ships were ready, the largest transport operation in the history of the conquest of America began. Thousands of Native Americans carried the parts of the brigantines over mountain passes, covering enormous distances across difficult terrain. It was an endless human chain stretching for many kilometers along narrow trails. Native allies also actively participated in the lake battles, using their own canoes under the cover of the British ships' cannons. They knew all the shoals and currents of the lake, helping the Spanish captains maneuver in difficult conditions. It was a unique combination of traditional combat methods and new European technologies. The Allied warriors displayed incredible bravery, engaging in hand-to-hand combat in narrow waterways. Their knowledge of the terrain allowed them to launch surprise attacks on the rear of the Aztec naval units. This contribution to the naval war was no less important than the construction of the ships themselves. Do you think the Spanish could have won without those 13 ships on the lake? In the next chapter, you'll learn how the Aztecs tried to use their religious rituals to defend the city, and why that didn't work against the new tactics. Ready to learn about the clash of two completely different worldviews and approaches to war? Information about the spiritual confrontation will add new dimensions to the picture of this great historical turning point. The religious conflict of interest between the Aztecs and their neighbors was another deep-seated cause of betrayal and defection to the Spanish side. The Aztec religion demanded a constant influx of resources to conduct grand ceremonies, which placed a heavy burden on all the conquered peoples. Many rituals were perceived by surrounding tribes as a tool of political domination and intimidation. Christianity, brought by Cortés, preached the ideas of salvation and mercy, which stood in stark contrast to the customary local practices. Of course, the methods of spreading the new faith were often far from peaceful, but the concept itself was appealing to people weary of the old ways. The Spaniards destroyed idols and temples, replacing them with crosses and images of saints. The locals saw this not only as a religious act, but also as a symbol of the final collapse of the old authority. New rituals were introduced gradually, often intertwining with ancient traditions to create a unique cultural fusion. This helped new allies feel like part of a larger and more powerful world. For the Aztecs, however, their gods were the guarantors of the very existence of the universe and the regularity of natural cycles. They believed that without observing all the established rituals, the world might simply cease to exist. This conviction compelled them to fight with incredible tenacity, defending their temples as the last line of defense. When the Spaniards began to destroy the main temples of Tenochtitlan, and the sky did not split open in retaliatory wrath, many defenders finally lost hope. This was not merely a military defeat, but the total collapse of the entire cosmological system upon which the empire was built. The spiritual vacuum that followed was quickly filled by the victor's new religion. It is important to note that the conquistadors themselves were sincerely convinced of their messianic role and the necessity of saving the souls of the local inhabitants. This conviction provided them with a moral justification for many of the brutal acts committed during the conquest. They saw themselves as warriors of light, fighting the darkness of paganism in the farthest corners of the earth. This fanaticism made them fearless in the face of the enemy's superior forces and helped them endure any hardships. Religious zeal was the fuel that sustained the fire of expansion for many years. Faith was both a weapon and a shield in the hands of every participant in this epic campaign. Ultimately, the clash of two religious systems ended in the victory of the more flexible and organized structure. The Aztec state, inextricably linked to its cults, fell along with them, unable to adapt to new challenges. The religious factor became the catalyst that accelerated the empire's collapse from within, depriving it of its spiritual foundation. The betrayal of their neighbors was merely an external manifestation of a deep crisis of faith in the old gods. This lesson from history reminds us of the importance of spiritual unity and the flexibility of systems during periods of great change. The world had changed forever, and in place of the old pyramids, the majestic cathedrals of a new era began to rise. The strategy to encircle Tenochtitlan was a classic example of a long and grueling siege aimed at completely depleting the city's resources. Cortés understood that a direct assault across the narrow causeways would result in enormous losses among his soldiers and allies. Therefore, he decided to cut off the capital from all supply routes by blocking the roads and patrolling the lake with his ships. This decision turned the once thriving metropolis into a trap for hundreds of thousands of its inhabitants. Hunger and thirst began their destructive work within the city walls far more effectively than any cannons. The Aztecs found themselves trapped in their own home, watching as the enemy's ring tightened more and more with each passing day. Each of the three main causeways leading into the city was blocked by powerful contingents of Spaniards and their indigenous allies. Warriors from Tlaxcala and other cities took up positions along the banks, thwarting any attempts to break the blockade by land. They built fortifications and ditches to protect their camps from sudden sorties by Aztec units. It was a war of attrition, where every meter of ground cost immense effort and patience. The Spaniards used their cavalry to patrol the surrounding area and destroy small groups of enemy foragers. The city gradually sank into isolation, losing contact with its provinces and allied cities on the coast. The Aztecs used every house as a small fortress, setting up ambushes and dropping stones from the roofs onto the heads of the advancing troops. Street fighting was extremely fierce due to the numerous canals that crisscrossed the city in all directions. Every street intersection became a site of bloody clashes, where the advantage often shifted back and forth. The Aztecs attempted to use fire to defend their positions, setting wooden structures ablaze in the enemy's path. However, this only accelerated the destruction of the city's infrastructure and increased the suffering of the civilian population. Death and destruction became the sole masters of the once thriving lakeside city. The siege of Tenochtitlan became one of the largest and most brutal military operations in the history of pre-Columbian America. It demonstrated Cortés' ability to coordinate the actions of vast numbers of people from completely different cultures. It was a clash of two different approaches to war, the ritualistic Aztec and the pragmatic European. This serves as a reminder that an empire's internal stability is just as important as its external military power. The loss of trust from their neighbors proved to be a fatal mistake for the Aztecs, one they realized too late. The world of Central America was changed forever, leaving behind only legends of past greatness and a tragic end. The Great Siege came to an end, paving the way for the birth of a new nation and culture. The collapse of the Aztec Triple Alliance occurred not only due to external pressure, but also as a result of internal betrayal by key partners. At the decisive moment, the city-states of Texcoco and Tlacopan, members of the alliance, decided to reconsider their obligations to Tenochtitlan. The leaders of these cities saw that the old order was crumbling under the blows of the Spaniards and their numerous allies. They did not want to go down with the sinking ship of the empire and chose to save their peoples by making a deal with Cortés. This was a betrayal of the highest order, which finally deprived the emperor of any hope of military success. The Triple Alliance, which had dominated the region for centuries, collapsed in an instant, leaving Tenochtitlan completely isolated. Particularly painful for the Aztecs was the defection to the Spanish side of the city of Texcoco, which had traditionally been considered the cultural and intellectual center of the alliance. This state possessed a vast fleet of canoes and controlled a significant portion of the lake's shoreline. The ruler of Texcoco provided Cortés not only with his warriors, but also with a base for building and launching brigantines. This betrayal gave the Spaniards the key to dominance on the water, without which the siege of the capital would have been impossible. Texcoco's intellectual elite also shared vital knowledge about the vulnerabilities in Tenochtitlan's defenses. Thus, former brothers-in-arms became the Aztecs' most dangerous and well-informed enemies. Deprived of the support of Texcoco and Tlacopan, the Aztec army lost its mobility and the ability to receive reinforcements. Now every warrior who fell in Tenochtitlan was an irreplaceable loss, as external resources were completely cut off. Aztec commanders watched with bitterness as their former allies now fought against them under banners bearing crosses. After the fall of Tenochtitlan, the Spaniards' new allies quickly realized that their expectations of equality had been naive. They went from being partners to subjects of the crown, losing their real independence step by step. However, at the moment they decided to switch sides to Cortés, their only concern was the immediate elimination of Aztec dominance. Short-term goals once again prevailed over the indigenous people's long-term strategy for survival. Ultimately, the history of the Triple Alliance ended as a cautionary tale of how internal disunity can destroy even the most powerful alliances. The Aztecs were unable to create a strong federation based on mutual respect and the common goals of all participants. Their state was held together by fear and force, which vanished at the first serious external challenge. The betrayal of Texcoco and Tlacopan was merely the final chord in the long song of the great empire's decline. The world of Central America entered a new era, where old alliances no longer held any significance. Victors and vanquished were now equal in their submission to a new, distant, and incomprehensible power. The legacy of the forgotten victors, the indigenous peoples who fought on Cortés' side, remains a subject of complex debate in modern Mexico. After the victory over the Aztecs, the Tlaxcalans and other allies received certain privileges from the Spanish crown, which were maintained for centuries. They were exempted from many taxes and granted the right to self-governance in their communities under the supervision of Spanish officials. Their leaders received noble titles and coats of arms, becoming part of the region's new colonial aristocracy. This was the reward for their invaluable contribution to the destruction of Aztec power and the establishment of a new order. For a long time, they considered themselves full partners in the victory and architects of the new country. However, over time, these privileges began to gradually erode under pressure from the growing colonial bureaucracy and changes in Madrid's policies. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those who had stormed Tenochtitlan found that their status was gradually being reduced to that of ordinary subjects. Spanish settlers arriving in Mexico felt no obligation to their ancestors' former allies and sought to seize their lands. Gradually, the proud title of allies gave way to the bitter realization that they had simply been used as a tool to achieve someone else's goals. This sparked a wave of disappointment and quiet protests among the indigenous nobility, who sought to defend their rights in the courts. The story of their participation in the Conquista began to transform from a heroic saga into a sad tale of lost illusions. After Mexico gained independence in the 19th century, attitudes toward the role of allies underwent significant changes once again. The new state sought its roots in the greatness of the Aztecs, idealizing their empire as a symbol of national spirit and resistance. In this new ideology, the Tlaltec people once again found themselves on the margins of history, viewed as an obstacle on the path to national greatness. Monuments to Aztec heroes began to spring up across the country, while the Allies' contributions were either ignored or portrayed in a negative light. This was a time of creating new myths necessary to unite disparate regions into a single modern state. The political climate once again rewrote the pages of the past to suit the interests of the present. For future generations, the story of Cortés's allies serves as an important lesson about the consequences of internal strife and the value of unity. It serves as a reminder that hatred toward a close neighbor can lead to the loss of sovereignty for all parties involved in the conflict. The tragedy of the Aztecs and their allies is that, in the end, they all found themselves in the same boat as the subjugated peoples. We hope this dive into the history of the fall of the Aztec Empire has helped you gain a new perspective on the causes of this monumental event. Which part of this story did you find most surprising? Malinche's role, the tax economy, or the betrayal of allied cities? Your opinion is very important to us, so be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below this video. We're also always happy to hear your suggestions. What topics for future videos would you like to see on our channel in the near future? We carefully read all feedback to make our content even more interesting and informative for you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you don't miss our new historical investigations. Your support helps us continue working on high-quality documentary scripts about the most mysterious chapters of the past. See you in the next episodes where even more exciting discoveries await us.